What we are talking about is the Castle Guard framework. And where this comes from, for me, I had a 20-year clinical psychology career. So that was my whole background was psychology. When I moved into the entrepreneurship space, obviously I got very interested in how do I transfer my psych knowledge into marketing. And I got very interested specifically in buyer psychology. And so I had been studying what actually makes somebody buy. And what's interesting is when you start getting into the research, there are about 16 different areas that are validated by the research that make a person say yes or no on a purchase. And when I started digging further into these, originally I would go around and I would give talks and I'd be like, here's these 16 different areas. And you could see people like glaze or, like nobody can take in
Is she done
16.
yet?
Exactly. Like it is way too much. Like I'm out here nerding out about my psychology charts and they're like, oh, woman, sit down. And so what I realized though in teaching them over time was that actually they fall out into four different categories. And it sounds like you hit such a common thing for a lot of businesses in general, but especially small business owners. So let me really quick just summarize the four categories for your listeners so that they know what
Yes.
we're talking about.
Right.
So number one, what drives a purchase? Number one is drive. So this is emotion. This is, I hope for this outcome, or I'm feeling this pain point, or I'm having this fear. There is something driving me towards getting a podcast producer, for example. There is something driving me towards whatever it is that your small business is trying to sell, your service, your product. So that is drive. That is a first big motivator. And to me, that's usually the one for most of us in our own psychology that kicks off any purchase, right? Like if I have no drive towards something, I'm not even really looking at it. It's not going to go too far. And that is the one that often we're told to really hammer on, like, oh, hammer on the pain points and hammer on the hope for the transformation. And so a lot of us get pretty good at articulating that stuff when we're doing marketing. And so, but that is really just one of four, what I call guards that you have to overcome in the client's psyche. So then the second area is identity. And identity, of course, we know this one. This is either, does this purchase represent who I am, or does it represent my aspirational identity, like who I want to become? Like maybe I'm a nobody podcaster and I want to become a famous podcaster. These are these two parts of my identity that I'm looking at right now. And of course, identity can encompass more than just current identity, aspirational identity. It can encompass what are the culture and social factors? What are we trying to signal? What tribes do we like to consider ourselves part of? Is there a sports team that you love that you always want to wear their gear? Like all of those things fold into identity. And again, that's another one that very often as small business owners, we get good at that. And often we've learned from the people who have taught us things like form a cult around your brand. You want everybody saying, I'm a funnel hacker, or like I'm a Whole Foods girl, or whatever, I'm a Peloton person, whatever it is. Like identity is a really, really big one in marketing. However, again, it's really just when you look at the research, it's one of the four. So if you put all your eggs in the identity basket, it's a strong one. But as maybe would happen to you, risk and pattern can still knock you down. So risk and pattern are the last two. So risk. Now, obviously, we understand the concept of risk, right? So number one, risk could be financial. Am I going to waste money here? Am I going to get ripped off? Is this a bad decision? Is there a cheaper version somewhere? Am I missing a coupon code on the internet somewhere? What's the financial risk involved? But there's also social risk. There's also what will people think? Like, what if I buy this and I fail? What if I don't succeed? There's self-esteem risk that we take on in purchases as well. So all of those things. And then there's basic functional risk. What if I buy this thing and it doesn't work? Or that program that I really want actually sucks when I buy it. There's all of those things fold under that category of risk. And risk to me in our psyche is one of the most sort of hair trigger things that can create a little micro no. And actually, I'll give you an example. I just sent out a story about this to my newsletter not long ago. This happened to me just recently. I was online. I was looking at just some inexpensive jewelry. I had some jewelry in this, cart. I hadn't checked out yet, but it was like sitting in the cart and I was going to buy it. And so, because of that, this brand, their ads were following me around the internet and I kept seeing their ads. And all of a sudden, on one of their ads, I noticed there was one comment from one random person, total stranger, don't know who she was. And she wrote, "You can get all this stuff on Shein for like $2. This is just drop shipping with a fancy website."
Ooh.
Now, yeah, was that true? I have no idea. But my wrist guard that said, "Oh, I might be about to be getting ripped off," immediately I abandoned the cart. They lost the sale because of that one tiny comment that made that wrist guard in my mind come flying to the front, right? Right. And that's all it takes because it's such a hair trigger one for people. And so risk is a big one. And then the last little guard that people do not pay enough attention to, but it's huge, is what I call pattern. And so, how do you, your product, your course, your program, how do you fit into my life, into my habits, into my workflows, into all the different things that I already do? Am I going to have a big learning curve? Am I going to have switching friction? Like a lot of times we see this with software as a service type products, the switching friction. I was working with a bank recently and they were saying, how do we get people to come to our bank? You can see immediately with that. When you think about switching banks, you're just, oh, the paperwork,
What a
you know,
nightmare.
what a nightmare.
All
Exactly.
the
And so,
accounts. Yeah.
yes.
Oof.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. And so for that, so if I'm advising this bank, I'm saying to them, every single thing you need to be talking about is how you have the easiest system in the world to switch over. And you have to really, but that's that pattern guard. People are just going to take one look at that and go, I don't like my bank that much, but it's such a pain to switch. I'm just going to stick with it,
They'll just
and
tolerate it.
they'll
Yeah.
just tolerate it. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when we look across the spectrum, any one of these four little guards, drive, identity, risk, or pattern, can derail a sale. And I think so often with marketing, we're taught like persuasion, persuasion, get the yes, get the yes. To me, I really look at it completely differently. I look at it and I go, where is the micro no? Where is the tiny little no? Because it just takes that one tiny little no to derail whatever the sale is. And when you diagnose that, now, like with that bank, now you put all your attention on that micro no. And now the sales can start coming through because now you've cleared that gate in the person's mind.
Okay, so when it comes to risk, do you find that financial risk or risk of failure drives the no more? What have you seen in your past in your work
It's
more?
such an interesting question. And it's such a big, it depends, right? Because
Mm.
sometimes the financial risk is going to be really minor. Sometimes the product is not that expensive, or maybe it's not that much more than what you're currently paying for already somewhere. Maybe it's like switching cable services, it's got similar price. So the financial risk might not be that bad for somebody. Now, I do think social risk is a lot of times bigger than we estimate. Self-esteem risk is a lot of times bigger than we estimate. I used to have my own large coaching certification program that I ran, and I knew, just because I knew my clients, I knew they would come in with the thought in their head that said, what if this works for everybody else and not me? And so, knowing that, I really tried to build a program that had kind of a, no student left behind type of mentality where there was just a ton of coaching support and lots of guest coaches and lots of availability so that it could mitigate some of that internal risk that would kick up in their minds.
Wow. So it's what if this works for everybody else except for me? And that seems just about as dangerous as one comment on one click of an article or what have you about, well, this is Shein and I could get this
Yep.
for $2. That seems
Yep.
just as just as impactful in a bad way.
Absolutely. In a bad way. Absolutely. And that's why I think the brands that specifically go after like these four directions and they specifically look and say, okay, what are the possible things that might be just kicking up in the back of someone's mind? Because the thing about the four guards is they fire in all of our brains on every single purchase. I mean, if you were buying gum in the checkout line, those four guards, they might just, look up and glance over and go, yeah, that's fine, gum. That's an easy one. That might be completely fine. It fits in their pattern. It's low financial risk, drive and identity. They're like, yeah, we like to have gum. We don't want bad breath. We'll grab some gum. It's all in there. But they do fire every single time. And so sometimes, like I said, they're firing in milliseconds. You don't even know it's happening. Sometimes maybe you're buying a car and maybe it's 3 months that you're making lists and you're looking at the features and you're doing test drive. You're really trying on all of these different guards. I can tell you, interestingly, too, one thing that's really helpful, and this might work for you and some of your clients, I think for most brands, for most different types of purchases, the levels of the guard are different. And people can play with this on my website so that you can get a sense of it. We'll put the website, I'm sure, in the show notes, but it's
Yes.
buyerpsych.com. And you can go there and you can see for different types of purchases, like perhaps for yours, risk and pattern are going to be bigger guards for you, like harder to overcome in that sale. For other types of purchases, it might be the identity that you really need to sell to or that drive. And so you can look at, for my category of product, what do I assume are going to be the harder guards to overcome? Like we talked about with the bank, they know pattern is going to be their big one, right? And so you look at that, and then you can also look and say, what is my hero guard in this situation? So what is the guard that the person might actually use to convince the other guards that they should buy this product? I did this to myself recently. Can I give you an example of this?
You've
So
got the
I'll
wheels
tell you,
turning.
yeah, we have. So Lifetime Fitness. Now, I have friends in different parts of the country who they love their Lifetime gym. It's like their whole personality, their whole social life. They love it. So I've heard about these gyms forever. For a year, there's been one, it's literally getting built like a mile from my house. I've been watching it go up right down the street, right? And so I was like, oh, cool. I know all these people that love Lifetime. I'm going to join Lifetime. Oh, and they've got a co-working space there. This is going to be great. I'm going to join Lifetime. Well, they finally published their prices and like my jaw hit the floor because there's also a $10 a month gym across the street. Lifetime is absurdly expensive in the world of gyms. And yet I had spent a year watching this be built. My identity had convinced itself, I'm going to go to the Lifetime. I'm going to be the Lifetime fitness person. That is my new gym. That is where that's where I'm going to do my co-working, all these things. And so at first I like get the email with the prices and I sit there and I'm like mad. I'm like, come on, they can't be serious. Like this is ridiculous. And then I'm talking to my other friend in the neighborhood and she's mad too. And we're both mad about it. But the problem is my identity guard was so strong right then, and my drive guard. I've been working on it home for a million years. Like I really wanted a new place to actually go and have the machines again and be back at the gym. And so my identity and my drive were very strong. And they started reasoning in the back of my mind the different reasons that maybe it would work out. And I literally went so far as to email my tax guy and say, if I quit my co-working space and I move my co-working space to Lifetime, is that a tax deduction? Like literally, my guard was like, okay, how can I make this price work in a way? And sure enough, it is. So that's a lucky thing. So my new co-working space is right there too. But
Can I just say how fascinating
yeah,
it is to hear a former therapist rationalize
talk
a
through these
purchase like
things,
this?
right? Totally, totally. And the funny thing is, we all do it. And what I find when I start telling people about this, that's when I start getting the emails that are like, Katie, like I was at the freaking grocery store and I realized that the pattern guard was saying this. Because once you start thinking this way, you see it in yourself. And it just pops up all over the place. It's really fascinating because
It
it's not
feels like you're
being made up.
breaking
It's the research.
it feels like you're breaking us out of a matrix.
That's right. Well, it's so fun when you actually get to look at your own thinking. I say fun as a 20-year therapist who really enjoys looking at people's thinking. So maybe it's not fun for everyone. But I think it's really fascinating, honestly, to be able to step back and be like, oh, this is the series of thoughts that I went through making this decision. And when you apply that, you think everybody on earth does the same things. We go through from our own vantage points, of course, and from the lens of our own values, but we go through the same questions, the same identifiers.
Oh, absolutely. And this is all really fascinating stuff. It's buyer psych, like psychology.com. So buyerpsych.com. The link will be in the show notes.
Right.
And at the core of this conversation, Katie, we are talking about artificial intelligence. So this is a prompt that people can use when it comes to operating their business, their nonprofit, their podcast,
Yeah.
however they use it. And you and I had met on LinkedIn through a post that you had written about, which was such a breath of fresh air because it was not the world is AI slop and oh, you kids get off my lawn. It was you've got very fascinating thoughts about the use of artificial intelligence in the business world. So how can outside of the killer prompt that you've got for Castle Guard, how can people utilize the power of AI moving forward without losing their soul?
I love that. Without losing their soul. I love that. The very first answer I'll give to that question is whatever is truly yours, keep it. Whatever is truly yours, keep it. So for me, writing has always been the thing that I have loved. And I think a lot of us went through the process in the early days of AI of being like, oh, maybe this will help. Maybe this will go faster. Maybe this will do XYZ. And for me, it started to be painful for me to try to give away my writing or to try to make it write like me. And I was like, never mind. I'm keeping my writing. I'm keeping that. But where AI to me is fascinating and is still underused in business is in the fact that it can do something we never, ever, ever had access before. You look at AI, what is it? It's a thing that basically read the entire open internet, right? Like whatever is free and available on the internet, it read it. It read most of the major psychology texts of the world. It understands human patterns, human behaviors, human psychology on a level that we just simply never had access to before because no one person could have consumed all that information and then told us what it said. And so, what I find fascinating is literally that we can use it to understand the thinking patterns of our clients, our customers, our base, whoever we're talking to. And so you're right. If people go to Buyer Psych and sign up, not like a pitch to my newsletter, but it's a damn good newsletter. But what I do is immediately I send you several prompts that you can use to understand where your clients, your customers might be having one of these guards triggered so that you can find that micro no. And then every week I send new AI prompts that are really all geared around using AI for this purpose. And if I can just give a tip to the audience, I write my prompts assuming that people are not going to be able to hire me and bring me into their company, but that maybe you're a solopreneur and you just want to be able to have this information. At the beginning of each of my prompts, I would say to you, if there is somebody that you're following online and you like their idea or their framework or their website, I write my prompts and I literally say to people, tell your AI, fetch buyerpsych.com, read the Castle Guard framework, and now answer the questions from this person's framework, from Katie Reed's Castle Guard framework that's here. And that way you are getting the benefit because the AI reads it and the AI is like, oh yeah, I get this. Okay, cool. I've read this now. I understand it. And now the AI, because we're all so close to our own work, we can't always identify what might be going wrong or where our messaging is off or where our product or our offer needs a little bit of improvement. We're too close to it. But we use the pattern matching of the AI and it can step back without any emotions and see it for us. And so, and I'm telling you, if you like anybody's work, do that. I do that all the time. I say, fetch so and so, tell me what they would say about this. Tell me from this person's point of view, what would they say about this? It's a great way to use the system. And there's so much information now immediately available to us like that.
Oh my goodness. Let me tell you something, Katie. At the end of the year, I'm newish at owning a business. I've been a corporate shill for all of my life. And my first job was at McDonald's. So that's all I've known is corporate America. Okay.
Yeah.
So at the end of each calendar year, I do a forecast for the next year. And I never thought to do it in previous years, but this past December, I did it. I said, "You are Alex Hormozy. You are my business development officer. You are Robert Greene. You are my business coach." And then I gave it
Nice.
a really detailed prompt about who my clients are, what I did in revenue, my profits, where can I have gone wrong? Where do I go? Where have I gone right?
Oh, I love
Don't
that.
placate me. Don't bullshit me.
Yep.
And that's a very important caveat to add too when you're prompting, because you
Yep.
don't want a yes person, you don't want a yes chat bot. So but it's amazing, to your point, that when you add those specific things to a prompt, like, hey, act like this person, act like Mel
Yeah.
Robbins, or act like Katie Reed, it really makes a world of difference.
Yep. It does. It's fantastic too, because you're getting a whole new lens on your own work that you wouldn't have been able to probably pay for an hour of Alex Hormozy's time. I don't think any of us can afford that. But
Right.
you can get that lens on his work, his voice, and I absolutely love using it that way. You can use deep research even and say, hey, deep research, tell me everything that Hormozy ever said about this topic, whatever it is, and it'll go search every podcast, any blog post, any writing. You don't have the hours to do all of that, but now you can get a full report on those things hand delivered to you. So these are the ways that instead of letting AI become a creator for you and sort of absconding your own unique thoughts about it, you can use it to pull in all the brilliant minds that have already put a lot out on the internet that you can now pull in and directly apply to your business as if the person's in the room coaching you.
I've got a very selfish question, Katie, and that is,
Yes.
how do you like to prompt? Do you type it out? Do you dictate into your chat bot? Do you use something like Whisperflow, or
Whisperflow, I love. I
spill the
love
tea?
Whisperflow. I love Whisperflow. I will say I am a terrible prompter because I
Hmm.
will just want to talk and process, even though I know it's like not the way that I should be doing it. If for anybody out there who has API access, there's a great tool if you're using ChatGPT, and I do not remember the website of it, but I'll try to find it and send it to you for the show notes. It's a tool where you can take your big, messy prompt and it's a prompt optimizer. Have you seen this before?
I have not.
It's a really cool tool and it's just free through OpenAI. But you can take, let's say you have a big, messy, like multi step prompt, you put it into this prompt optimizer and it will basically rewrite it so that the robot understands it better.
Huh.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's really cool.
So follow up thought. I
Yeah.
have listened to a ton of Gary Vee podcast episodes even before the AI revolution, but now he's really big on AI, uh, and 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 he's talked about how he speaks a 30-minute long prompt,
Oh,
and that
wow.
is how you get an output that is uniquely you. And I have to say, I love it. I don't think I've done a 30-minute long prompt, but I may have done something between 15 and 20 minutes.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and the result is incredible. But I'm wondering you've talked about the prompt optimizer, but do you really like it? Like, how much better do you like the prompt optimizer versus the raw prompt that you enter?
So for me, it depends on the task. Like if I'm just brainstorming, for example, where it's more just I want that natural conversational flow to keep the ideas moving, that's one thing. If I'm building out a system, say for a client that they're going to use with their AI on the back end, then I go into the optimizer because I really want to understand how is the robot thinking in the background, because there's all this fascinating stuff when you get into real prompt optimization. Like if you have a very long system prompt that you're putting in, there's interesting things like it will weight what it read most recently as more important than what it read in the very beginning of the very long prompt. Yeah, it's fascinating when you get into it. So one of my other businesses is I have a business called Living Persona, where I take market research, I extract the buyer psychology that we've been talking about, and I build living personas of the actual segment from the business and from their market research. And so with those, it's interesting because I'm creating a guardrailed AI model that has to follow a very specific personality. So it has a thinking and reasoning model that I build into it, and it has to follow that. And because of that, it's amazing. I will get very different results if I put certain parts of the personality towards the beginning of the long prompt versus towards the end. Or if I let the AI have a little bit more creativity to it than if I'm like, no, 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 you get no creativity. You just got to stick to the rules, you know? So it's really interesting when you get very deep into that. Now, the typical user doesn't need to know all of that, but it is interesting. That's what I do like about using things like the optimizer is you can start to see the patterns of, oh, this is how I'm actually going to help the AI think better, which can be very helpful, especially for people like it sounds like you and I both, who like to just dump a lot of information and hope the machine figures it out.
It is very interesting to hear a former therapist say you want to make the robot, the AI, think better.
Yeah.
Is-
Yeah, it is. Well, and I feel like we're all like, I am not a technical, techie type of person. So I feel like we're all in this interesting world right now where we're learning this new technology that's going to be here for, I mean, I'm telling my kids, I'm like, you got to learn this now. This is your whole
yes.
life. There's nothing else now. This is your future. And so I'm like, we all have to learn this stuff now and learn, where does it fit into my life? What boundaries do I want around it in terms of where do I want to keep my own creativity? Where do I want to keep my own thought leadership and thought about different topics that are important to me? Like, what are the things I want it to help with? I find in the beginning, I used to love it for brainstorming. And now I'm like kind of cooling off on using it for brainstorming. I'm going back to doing my own separate from the AI only because sometimes I feel like it'll lead you on a side quest and you're like, wait, how did we get here? That wasn't where we started out.
Okay, I
So
want to ask you about that. Do
yeah,
you think
yeah.
that it's because when you do brainstorm and you get the reply that it asks you, okay, so taka 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 waka waka. By the way, Katie, would you like for me to create a five-step optimization plan? And so
Exactly.
because it's asking
Exactly.
you more and more and more, the more you input, do you think
And it
that's
just keeps
why?
going. I actually do think that's why.
Huh.
And I think it's funny. And if you've watched, I think ChatGPT is the big one where we have seen their company go into models that basically dropped like clickbait at the end. Like, do you want to know the most exciting thing that anybody ever said about that? And you're like, well, yeah. You know, and these sort of annoying, like BuzzFeed type questions at the end versus just a sort of normal follow up question versus where it would get you completely wrong. Like you'd be brainstorming something like a personal topic or whatever, and it'd be like, do you want me to build you an Excel spreadsheet? You're like, what are we talking about here? You know, it's all over the place. But I think it's pretty fascinating to see how quickly it can lead you down its way of thinking. And I don't know what perplexity is like. I like Claude because Claude actually does not tend to do a lot of those leading questions at the end necessarily. It tends to just give you an answer and then stop. And I find Gemini typically just gives you an answer and then stops. I think one of the best things people can do at this stage of the game is play with all the big ones and figure out, like, for whatever reason, I love the thinking model of Gemini. And I know it's not one that people go to a lot, but there is something about the way Gemini thinks that really works for the way I think. And so I find myself going back to Gemini over and over when I need like a thinking partner on a business issue or whatever I'm working on. So I think playing around with different ones and figuring out where does my brain like the best out of how all these different ones think is pretty fascinating.
Okay, so you've piqued my curiosity about Gemini
Yeah.
because I have really only ever been using Perplexity and I'm sort of a cheapskate. I use Perplexity, but the model that is being used with the chat is, what is it? It's Claude 4.6. It's not
Okay.
Opus.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think Opus is like the big baller one. But yeah, I use Perplexity with whatever the free
The
version
model.
of Claude is, and it's you get like
Perfect.
a specific number of prompts per day. But Gemini I've only ever been using for image generation
It is
and
good for
video
that.
generation, which is really, really good.
Yeah, it's amazing for that. It's amazing for that. I just also, I really like the brain in Gemini. And I don't know, people don't talk about it that much, but it just works for me. And it probably doesn't work for everyone, but it works for me. Although Claude too, I love Claude too. They both, it's funny when you'll take the same prompt and put it in different ones just to see the different thinking behind the scenes and how they process. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, and that's I think it's a great check. It's a great check on what you're inputting and what, like if, like let's say for instance, I felt at one point late last year that Perplexity was being too much of a yes bot. We have yes men
Oh,
in the corporate world. I think it's been too much of a
yes,
yes bot.
bot. I love
So
that.
so I'll copy and paste like all 10 prompts that I used for a single exchange about whatever business issue I was going through at that time. And so I had it into like, I guess like a five or maybe probably 500 or 600 word prompt, and then copy and paste it into Grok. And it would give me a somewhat similar answer. And then I know, okay, so Perplexity isn't just shooting me bull crap.
Ah, okay. Right, right. You had that something else to tell you, okay, it's not just totally being a yes man here. I like that. That's a
Yeah.
good way
So
to
it's not
double check it.
confirmation bias, so to speak, because,
Right,
that's
right.
no, I don't think any effective business person wants to be heard yes all the time.
Exactly. You want that. You want the actual pushback of, well, that's why I like what you did with saying, like, act like you're Alex Hormozy or Gary Vee, because you know that those are people who, just as human beings, would push back and would tell you what you're doing wrong. So I think you're giving the model permission to actually behave that way and to push back and tell you what you're doing wrong. And we all need, I mean, this is the way, ChatGPT was convincing people they had discovered like new forms of mathematics and all this crazy stuff. And I think they've reined a lot of that in now, but that's what they were getting in trouble for, was the constant yes spot and, oh, you're a genius and no one's ever thought of this before. Yeah, I'm sure that's a beautiful primrose path that none of us want to walk down.
Yeah.
So
1 + 1 actually is 3.
exactly, exactly.
Wow. Well, Katie, this has been such a fun conversation, and I look forward to engaging with you more on LinkedIn. You're
Absolutely.
so much fun, and y'all please check out our website. It's Katie Reed, like Katie IE read like you read a book.com, katiereed.com, and the other website is buyerpsych.com. We're going to link them both in the show notes.
And I am excited to keep talking to you more and keep the conversation alive. I could talk about this stuff all day. So for any listener, please reach out anytime.